You're listening to Campus Killings, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Below the Surface, and Killer Communications. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Hi, Amy, and hello, listeners. Today's case was suggested by Grace K. She writes that she's a longtime listener of our podcasts. So thank you, Grace, for being such a fan. Her suggestion is also a personal one, as she was a student at the University of Connecticut between 2009 and 2016 for both her undergraduate and graduate studies. And in that time, the school experienced 4 deaths. And while 2 of those deaths were accidental, the other 2 that we'll be focusing on today were not. Jasper Howard and Jafar Karzoun were killed only a year apart, and their tragic deaths made a serious impact on campus safety policies, along with ushering in drastic changes to one of the university's long-held traditions, Spring Weekend. But before we get to that, let's take a look at the University of Connecticut, or UConn, to get some background. Founded by the Storrs brothers, Charles and Augustus, in 1881, the Storrs Agricultural School began with 170 acres of farmland, a few barns, and an abandoned orphanage building. They opened their doors with 3 faculty and 13 male students. By 1893, the school went co-ed, accepting its first female students. And by 1899, they'd rebranded as the Connecticut Agricultural College. By the turn of the century, the college began awarding 4-year degrees in science. And by the 1930s, they had revamped into a full liberal arts college and rebranded a second time as Connecticut State College. They became an accredited university in 1939 and spent the rest of the 20th century building and expanding into the massive city-sized campus UConn is now. Today, the school has around 32,000 students between its undergraduate and graduate programs. They're an R1 doctoral research school and a Division I in all NCAA sports. Located in Mansfield, Connecticut, just 22 miles away from the state's capital city, the school attracts both out-of-state and local students, which interestingly covers both of our subjects for today's episode. And we're going to start with Jasper. Born and raised in Miami, Jasper Howard, who was nicknamed Jazz, grew up surrounded by poverty and violence that was difficult to escape. However, his single mother worked multiple jobs to support Jasper and his 2 younger sisters to ensure that they had a good childhood. But despite how hard their mother worked, Jasper's younger sister suffered from complications from meningitis that steeply affected the family's financial situation. Jasper vowed from a young age that he would pull his family out of poverty, and he had a plan to do it too. So get this, his plan was that he was going to make it to the NFL, and then he'd buy a beautiful home for his family so they'd never have to worry about money again. And while this may seem like a lofty dream for a middle schooler, Jasper had good reasons to believe in himself. Even at such a young age, he'd already shown great promise on his local football team. And in high school, it was evident that Jasper really could go somewhere. By his junior year, he'd become a standout player, where he was one of the main reasons his team made it to the regional finals. He worked extremely hard in training, his eyes set on obtaining an NFL scholarship to get him and his family out of their circumstances. And the work paid off, as he was selected as an all-Dade County honoree and named MVP in the Nike Dade Broward All-Star Game his senior year. He was also the team captain, and his coaches described him as an exceptional leader who led by example in training and determination. He became a Division I prospect for several universities, but he ultimately took a scholarship with the University of Connecticut to play as a cornerback for the UConn Huskies. He was the first person in his family to go to college, and his mom and sisters were so proud of his accomplishments. Jasper began his collegiate career in 2007, and while he wasn't immediately put into the games, he did meet an important mentor, Darius Butler, who was a senior at UConn at the time. Darius was actually picked for the NFL after graduation, and he wound up playing for the Patriots, Panthers, and the Colts before retiring in 2017. We all kind of dream of big things when we're younger, dream of being in the NFL, dream of something, but he was pretty close. He was on his way. Darius remembers Jasper as a charismatic, kind, and straightforward guy. Everybody loved him, and anyone he came in contact with only ever had good things to say about him. Darius took Jasper under his wing, and even after going on to play in the NFL, Darius recalled he and Jasper talked almost daily. And his mentoring did not go unnoticed by the coaches. In 2009, when Jasper was a junior, he became a key member of the team's defensive line. And his personal most impressive game was at the October 17th homecoming game against the Louisville Cardinals, where he and the rest of the Huskies beat the Cardinals 38-25. While everyone on the team played well that night, it was a standout performance for Jasper. He achieved a personal best of 7 solo tackles and recovered a fumble that ultimately helped win the game. And the best part, Darius was there to watch him. In the euphoria following his big win, Darius asked how he did it, and Jasper replied, "I play every play like it's the last play I'll ever play." Well, after what happened only hours later, Darius now sees Jasper's statement as a kind of omen. Jasper couldn't have known it when he said it, but October 17th's win would be the last play he'd ever play.
And now, a brief word from our sponsors.
Following the successful homecoming game, Jasper and his teammates attended a university-sponsored dance in the Student Union Center on the store's campus. Reveling in their victory, they spent the evening enjoying the dance school's spirit and having fun with their fellow students. But around midnight, Jasper and a few of his teammates ended up in a verbal altercation with a group of young men who were not from UConn.
Was this event open to the public?
It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be for UConn students, but apparently there's just too many. Like, these men later claimed they were at the dance because they heard there was a party at UConn and they just wanted to go out.
So they were just locals?
Yeah, and even though UConn only held the event technically for UConn students, I don't think that they were checking IDs and things of that nature. The school is so big as well. So I couldn't find anything that said whether or not the event was open to the public, but I'm not sure they could prevent the public.
I guess the important point is that people from the public were there.
Yes, they definitely were. And yes, that is the point. Now, according to affidavits, this fight started when Jasper's friend said something derogatory about a woman and the non-students took offense. But just as words were being thrown, someone pulled the fire alarm, forcing everyone to evacuate the building. As the 300 attendees left the area, Jasper and his friends walked away towards the basketball arena, where they were confronted by the same men from inside the dance. The verbal altercation turned quickly physical, and Jasper allegedly threw a punch at one of the young men, who retaliated by stabbing Jasper in the abdomen and slicing the shoulder of another football player, Brian Parker, with a knife. Jasper collapsed almost immediately, and surrounding students and campus security performed CPR to keep him alive while ambulances raced to the scene. But Jasper's wound was so severe that he was promptly airlifted to the St. Francis Hospital in Hartford. And though doctors worked very hard to save him, the knife had severed a major artery, causing massive internal bleeding. Unfortunately, Jasper was pronounced dead at 4 a.m. that morning. The rising football star, who had literally been at the top of his game only 12 hours earlier, was gone. So I just also want to point this out. He also had a girlfriend of 3 years who was pregnant with their child at the time. So, he was on the top of his career there, or top of his school career in terms of football. He was in love. He had a child on the way. It's a lot. It's a lot that was lost with this one fight and this one stab. And as his family and friends, the whole community was reeling at the news, Yukon police began their investigation. There hadn't been surveillance cameras in the area, but the altercation had happened in front of around 300 students, and many of them had filmed this fight. So with the help of the Connecticut State Troopers Major Crimes Division, detectives spent 2 weeks interviewing every single person who'd been present at the dance. And they were able to piece together most of the fight through photos and video taken from the students' phones. Not surprisingly now, right? Police dogs and a dive team were also dispatched to locate the knife and other evidence from the scene. Interviews and collected phone footage revealed that after the verbal dispute inside the dance, 2 of the men had run to their car and grabbed weapons before seeking out Jasper and his teammates when they were leaving the student center.
So this is premeditation.
This is premeditation, absolutely. And on October 27th, 2 weeks after Jasper's death, police arrested both men. So 21-year-old Manchester Community College student John William Lomax was charged with first-degree murder for stabbing Jasper, and a judge placed him on $2 million bail. His co-conspirator, 20-year-old Hakeem Mohammed, was charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree assault for obtaining weapons from the vehicle and returning to the fight.
Okay, but he didn't stab anyone, because you said someone else got stabbed in the shoulder. That was also done by the first man.
Correct, yes. And then a few more days later, there were 2 more arrests made. 21-year-old Jamal Todd, who was not a UConn student either, was charged with reckless endangerment for pulling the fire alarm at a campus party, which had caused the altercation and the chaos. It's unclear here if the fire alarm and Jasper's murder were related. His defense lawyer claimed Jamal was in the wrong place at the wrong time, so maybe this was a guy who thought this would be a funny prank. We're not really sure. Regardless, he's charged.
What did he get charged with again?
Reckless endangerment, because he pulled that fire alarm. But then 18-year-old Christopher Mulcher was charged with hindering prosecution, committing an act of terrorism, and several misdemeanors after he sent threatening internet messages to witnesses who were talking to the police. Yeah, so that becomes quite serious, too.
Because I'm assuming he's friends with the 2 other.
I'm assuming as well that that's exactly what he's related to the group, and he's trying to get people to keep their mouths shut. Being charged with an act of terrorism could be quite serious as well. They have everyone. The question remaining was, are they going to take plea deals, or is this group going to trial? At their arraignment hearing, John William and Hakeem's defense team claimed that there was no legitimate certainty that anyone saw the men with knives, and that even if they did have weapons, they were in a mutual combat situation. So they were defending themselves. I mean, this is, going to self-defense kind of thing. Their team also brought up that neither man had a criminal record, and both were upstanding citizens who attended community college, worked full-time jobs, and helped support their families. However, this did not sway the judge towards any leniency. Their charges were upheld. Jamal Todd, Christopher Mulcher, and Hakeem Mohammed did accept plea deals, though frustratingly, Amy, I couldn't find out what their sentences were.
Oh, that's usually easy to find.
I know. I don't know if this is like a closed plea deal, or I'm not really sure, but I just couldn't find out what exactly they got. I'm assuming they got much lesser sentence. We do actually know what happened with John William Lomax, because he pled not guilty and went to trial. But on January 14th, 2011, the opening day of his trial, he changed his plea to no contest on a downgraded charge for first-degree manslaughter.
Mm-hmm.
3 months later, on March 25th, a judge sentenced him to 18 years in prison. The judge took into account that John William had no prior criminal record, but that his actions were both senseless and violent.
I'm sorry, that's the one who did the actual stabbing.
That's correct.
And he only got
yes.
18 years?
That's correct. He got 18 years
Wow.
for first-degree manslaughter.
That's surprisingly lenient, assuming that he's not going to have to serve the whole sentence.
I thought so too. During sentencing, John Williams appeared remorseful and was in tears as he read his apology letter to Jasper's family, citing, "I know it hurts, and I wouldn't want this to happen to any family." I think 18 years is really lenient. This guy got a knife. He brought a knife to a fist fight. So I think this is too lenient for me. While no amount of prison time could bring Jasper back, his family, friends, and the Yukon community memorialized him as best they could. On October 20th, only a week after the stabbing, Yukon held a day of silence where students, faculty, and staff wore black clothing in a show of communal mourning for Jasper's passing. This was followed by a candlelit vigil at the Student Center, where over 2,000 people came to remember Jasper. For the rest of the Huskies' 2009 football season, they wore Jasper's initials painted on their helmets, as well as bringing Jasper's number 6 jersey and his helmet to every game. And over the next several years, the university implemented more long-term ways to remember Jasper. In 2010, a memorial was built in the football complex, featuring a large mural of Jasper, along with a plaque with his contributions to the Huskies and a collection of memorabilia from his 3 years on the team. This was followed up in 2014 with a permanent statue of Jasper's number 6, placed in front of the football stadium. Jasper's coach, Randy Edsall, was so personally impacted by Jasper's death that he funded several memorials in Jasper's name, including a scholarship for at-risk youth of the Hartford School District and an annual golf fundraiser to support inner-city youth. And though the Howard family was incredibly grateful for the outpouring of support from Yukon after Jasper's passing, they still felt that it was in their best interest to file a wrongful death suit against the university in 2012.
I'm assuming the only grounds they have is that there were non-university students at a university-sanctioned event.
Correct. So they sought over $5 million in damages for the lack of security and supervision during the homecoming dance. Again, why was this event open to the public or no security? I want to say, while I couldn't find the outcome of the suit, I have to imagine that they prevailed in some way in the wrongful
I'm sure
death
they
suit.
settled. Yeah.
I'm sure they did as well. I hope that in their settlement, they were able to hold the school accountable for providing more security, at least in that case. And while I couldn't find what the outcome of the suit was, it would not be the last time the university would face accusations of poor student safety measures. Only a year later, another Yukon student, Jafar Karzoun, would face a similar fate.
We'll return after a brief word from our sponsors.
While there wasn't much publicly available on Jafar's life, we do know that he came from a close, loving family where he was the oldest of 4 children. The youngest was his 3-year-old baby brother, Faisal, whom he doted on, and even after he went away to college, Jafar called home every day to ask Faisal about his day.
Oh, that's cute.
That's sweet. We have some students, I think it's interesting, we have some students who have significantly younger siblings, and it's like a different ballgame. In fact, my babysitter, one of my babysitters is 21 and has a 3-year-old brother, and she just adores him.
Oh, that's so cute.
Jafar's parents described him as their all-American boy who was always loyal and respectful and was very proud of his Muslim faith. We also reached out to Grace, since she was at UConn at the same time as Jafar, to see if she could give us any more information, and since she's the one who recommended these cases. While she didn't personally know Jafar, one of her friends went to high school with him and described him as a quiet and incredibly kind guy. He was also very smart, graduating cum laude from his high school, and at the time of the events we're discussing, He was a junior at UConn, and he just landed his dream internship with a large accounting firm in New York City. His mother, Lauren, said he called her up to tell her about his interview and the new suit he'd bought just for the occasion. And while he'd normally wait to tell the story when he went home on visit, on the Easter weekend of 2010, Jafar had decided to stay on campus to work on a group project instead of going home. I guess in big universities, too, you can stay on campus on some of the holidays.
I used to stay on campus at Rutgers, but I was living in off-campus housing, though. I guess that's different than living in a dorm.
Yeah, I don't know what the policy is. I mean, I know at our school, and I know where I teach part-time at ESU here, they have to leave for the holidays.
If they live in the dorm.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Because they probably don't have RAs and other people on staff.
Yeah, very true, okay. All right, this particular weekend, this Easter weekend, was quite special for UConn as the Easter holiday coincided with a long-standing tradition called Spring Weekend. Begun in the 1960s, Spring Weekend started out as a fun university-sanctioned event to help students blow off steam before heading into the crunch of studying for finals. The university historically hosted live music, dances, silly competitions on the campus grounds, and other lighthearted events to get students out of the study halls for a weekend.
That's a cute idea.
Well, you see it. There's some of the students do it on our campus too, I think. It's much
They have,
smaller
that
scale.
breakfast at like midnight breakfast or something.
Well, I also see them also. We sometimes have games in the quad, food,
Yeah.
stuff like that around finals. It's just much smaller because we're a smaller school.
That's true. Yeah.
But as the event grew over the years, several non-sanctioned traditions overtook the university's sponsored programs, bringing an influx of thousands of outsiders to the already city-sized campus. By 2010, Spring Weekend was more of a liability for the college than the fun blow-off steam program it was intended to be. So we asked Grace what she thought of Spring Weekend, and she described her experience in 2009 as chaotic and unsafe, where police could not control the massive crowds. She described one particular event called X-Lot Night, where thousands of 20-somethings would gather in one of UConn's commuter lots to party with Four Locos and water bottles filled with cheap vodka.
Oh, no. That sounds like the recipe for disaster.
Yeah, you said it sounds like a recipe for disaster. I mean, Four Locos is like a very high alcohol malt beverage, so...
Is that the one whose nickname is Blackout in a Can?
That's the one, yes.
Oh, no. Okay.
So this is not good, okay? Another such event was called Kill a Keg, where people entered a house party littered with beer kegs and no one was allowed to leave until all the kegs had been emptied.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, large alcohol-infused parties also rage over the 3-day weekend at the off-campus apartment complexes, and these often spilled out of the neighborhood and into the town of Mansfield. So while UConn's usual population of students was around 28,000 students, this number absolutely ballooned over Spring Weekend, with every 20-something from the surrounding areas coming to the campus to party.
Okay.
At some point every year, police in riot gear had to be brought out to quell the drunken young people fighting in the streets, setting fires to garbage piles, and destroying private property.
Jeez, might be time to rebrand that weekend.
Exactly. And while UConn administration did try to mitigate these issues by creating rules around guests visiting the campus over this weekend, along with providing more on-campus events to keep as many students within the college bounds as possible, these actions failed. The majority of students either went to both sanctioned events and off-campus parties, or they simply went partying and didn't go to the campus events at all. And a large part of the issue facing UConn administration was that for most of the worst parties happening in the private off-campus apartments a few blocks from the school, they didn't have the power to ban things, basically. And any moves to do so only ended in making the house parties more enticing. Between 2007 and 2009, Spring Weekend crowds were estimated at around 10 to 15,000 drunken young people spilling out of UConn and into the town of Mansfield. I mean, property damage and public intoxication were so bad that town officials actually told UConn administration that they feared a fatality was bound to happen if something didn't change. And tragically for Jafar, he became the fatality.
And now, a brief word from our sponsors.
On the first night of 2010 spring weekend, April 22nd, Jafar went downtown with his friends. Reports don't detail exactly what they were doing, but as a practicing Muslim, Jafar did not drink, so we know he at least was not partaking in the alcohol consumption at these non-sanctioned events. However, he may have been acting as a designated driver for his friends or just going along with the group to have a good time and socialize. In any event, at some point during the evening, Jafar and his friends ended up in a verbal altercation with a group of young men from out of town.
Again. Oh.
Yes. And it was one of those things where it's like almost innocuous at first, like they bumped into each other, a little pushing, trying to navigate the crowd. According to Jafar's family, nothing escalated at this time, and both groups went on their way. However, about an hour later, the groups ran into each other again, and this time it got a little physical.
Everyone was probably more intoxicated at this point, too.
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, someone from the out-of-town group pushed Jafar's friend to the ground. Jafar helped him up, and the two groups dispersed again. Allegedly, Jafar and his friends figured that this was the end of it, but around 1 a.m., as Jafar was answering a text outside a local pizzeria, a member of this group seemed to appear out of nowhere and punched him in the head so hard he fell to the ground unconscious.
This was just like a blitz attack?
Yes.
What?
Yes, exactly. When Jafar's friends found him, they immediately dialed 911 and called his parents to let them know what had happened. His parents listened over the phone in shock as EMS failed to revive their son, causing him to be airlifted via helicopter to the Hartford Medical Center. Similar to the night of Jasper Howard's assault, police had hundreds of eyewitnesses to Jafar's attack, and it only took a few hours to locate the man responsible. And exactly like Jasper's killer, 19-year-old Eddie Rappo was not a UConn student and had no affiliation to anyone at the university, but he'd heard about all the parties that happened during spring weekend, so he and his friends traveled to UConn to drink in the streets. While he initially told police he had no idea who Jafar was and he hadn't punched anyone or gotten into any fights, after being presented with several eyewitness statements and video evidence, he changed his story and admitted to punching Jafar. He claimed that he only hit him once and he had no idea that he'd go down so hard. He never says anything about a motive. I just think he was incredibly drunk, saw him, and hit him. Eddie was being charged with second-degree assault around the same time Jafar's family made it to Hartford to sit by his side in the ICU. But tragically, Jafar never woke up, and after 8 days in the hospital, he passed away due to extensive brain trauma.
It's so tragic.
Because it's just nonsense. Eddie's charges were upgraded to manslaughter. While Jafar's family dealt with the shock and grief of his sudden death, and UConn had to face the reality that a second student had been killed on their campus by people who were not students, the prosecution provided Eddie with a plea deal. The nature of its contents were never revealed to the public, but Eddie refused, with his lawyer later stating that Eddie was a decent young man with no criminal history, whose one bad punch was now dictating the rest of his life. He decided to take his chance at trial. But just like we saw in Jasper's case, Eddie ended up changing his not guilty plea to a no contest to manslaughter, for which he was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison and a subsequent 5 years of probation. What do we think about this? 4.5 years.
You know what I think about that.
I mean,
that is much too lenient.
I think it is too. The maximum he could have gotten was 10 years, and that's typically the standard for the type of case that it was, manslaughter. But I would have wanted to see 10 years then. Calling it one bad punch. I mean, that's one bad punch that was intentional ended a person's life, a beautiful person's life. So
yeah, imagine being the family hearing that.
No, I can't,
Awful.
actually. Moving on was incredibly difficult for them, with his mother citing that she lost 25 pounds and her hair began falling out from all the stress. But with the community support, the family memorialized their son in 2012 with a bench bearing his name overlooking Walnut Beach in their hometown of Milford. They also went on to sue both Eddie Rappo and UConn in a wrongful death suit. For the university, it was a second wrongful death suit in less than 2 years. And both deaths had occurred during campus events committed by people who had no affiliation to the university. The administration was at a crossroads.
It's pretty clear what they need to do.
Exactly. They could sit down and really look at how to enact better safety policies or be faced with more student deaths in the coming years, basically. When I was speaking about Jasper's case, we didn't really know the outcome, but I can tell you that after Jafar's death, they chose to revise their policies.
Good. If they only did it, though, after Jasper's, maybe Jafar would still be here.
I know. I know. In the days following Jafar's death, the university created a task force to address the issues around spring weekend. Seems to me spring weekend's just got to go, but
Yeah.
they have too many people. It's too big.
Mm-hmm. There's no way to really keep it under control.
I just don't think so, you know? The task force worked with UConn Campus Police, Connecticut State Police, and the Mansfield Town Council to create a new no-tolerance policy that was unveiled in 2011. Okay, so under these new rules, spring weekend would now have the following. Campus parking lots, pathways, and the roads leading into the campus would be blocked off to all non-students from the Friday night to Sunday afternoon of spring weekend. Access to the off-campus housing neighborhoods would be restricted to only UConn students, and this would be policed by both UConn PD and the apartment complex management. No guests would be admitted to any of the residential halls, and the dining hall would not allow entrance to any non-university members over the weekend.
This is also unfortunate when some people ruin it for everyone, because if you have a close friend or family member that you want to share in these festivities and now nobody can.
Yeah, well, the university also canceled all sanctioned spring weekend activities and urged students to go home. So, yeah. While the Student Government Association was behind these policy changes, this didn't mean that the student body was, as you were just saying. The administration received intense backlash from the students over these new rules, but the school doubled down in 2012, rolling out the same sanctions for spring weekend again. And as much as most students hated them, by all accounts, the policy seemed to have made a difference, as there were no more campus deaths by non-students following these changes. Now, you could just say that was a fluke. You know, a death is not the norm. But I imagine then that they didn't have any serious injuries or other violent acts as well. By 2013, UConn softly reintroduced spring weekend with campus-only events that students had to obtain university-sanctioned wristbands for. According to reports, the 2-year gap of no events and heavy police presence in the off-campus housing neighborhoods ended the ragers that had attracted thousands of outsiders. A new spring weekend has been reinstated at UConn since 2014 and seems to be thriving based on the event page on the university's website. Their 2025 spring weekend was only open to UConn students who were required to show their university ID at every event to enter, and security and public safety were heavily advertised as part of the event. So it seems like they are trying to bring back the events for students, legitimate students.
Good. I'm glad they figured out a way to keep it safe, but also keep the social aspect for the students.
Yeah. While all the cases we cover on this show are tragic, I just think this one is even more so in the sense that both Jasper and Jafar's deaths were not only avoidable had there been better policies in place, but the motives were so incredibly senseless. Fueled by anger over petty disagreements and intoxication, the world has been robbed of the good these two young men were bringing to the world. Jasper was on the road to the NFL, and we know by everything he was doing that he would have made it. But instead, he was taken at the age of 20. He never got to meet his daughter, and his loss is still deeply felt by so many. In fact, his mentor Darius painted number 6s on his NFL shoes and dedicated every game he played to Jasper for the rest of his career. He has kept in close contact with Jasper's family and acts as an uncle for Jasper's daughter. Jafar was on the road to building a career in accounting, and his baby brother couldn't wait to see him on that next trip home. Today, little Faisal is 13 years old and has few living memories of his doting oldest brother. Jafar is a photograph and a bench overlooking Milford's Walnut Beach. Like Jasper, Jafar is forever 20 years old, and the world will never know what he might have contributed. But as always, we hope that by sharing their stories here, we can keep their memories alive. I just want to say a special thanks again to Grace K for sending these suggestions our way. And if you have a campus case you'd like us to cover, send us a message at abjackentertainment.com/campuskillings. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll join us on the next episode of Campus Killings.
Before we go today, if you'd like to support Campus Killings, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts.
Your subscription will get you VIP access to all the shows on the network that not only includes hundreds of episodes of ad-free listening, but also bonus content and early access to episodes.
For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting this show in the process.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and search for either Campus Killings or AbJack, and you can start your subscription with a free trial.
Your support is greatly appreciated.
Campus Killings is hosted by Dr. Meghan Sachs and Dr. Amy Shlosberg, with research and writing by Abagail Belcastro. It's produced by Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to follow Campus Killings on social media. You can find Campus Killings on Twitter with the handle @CampusKillings or on Facebook at facebook.com/CampusKillings. You can also visit the show's homepage at campuskillings.com. Be sure to tune in every other Saturday for new episodes of Campus Killings.